this article in the paper about a gentleman named Tom Ogle down in El Paso, Texas, and he invented a car that would get 100 miles to the gallon. And so I was really interested in this idea.
In the 1970s, a mechanic named Tom Ogle stumbled upon a revolutionary discovery that made vehicles incredibly fuel efficient. His invention posed a direct challenge to the oil industry, promising huge cuts in fuel use and a cleaner environment. Despite the potential for massive benefits, his invention faced strong opposition from powerful forces. Why would such a groundbreaking discovery be suppressed, and what dark projects are the 1% and big corporations keeping from us? Let's find out what stopped Tom Ogle's invention that could have cut our fuel use forever. Gears of change. How a simple modification challenged big oil. In 1474, the city of Venice introduced a groundbreaking law that aimed to spark innovation by giving inventors the sole right to make and sell their inventions for a certain time. This was supposed to encourage them to share their ideas with everyone else, as they could profit from them without others copying their work immediately. Yet, not all discoveries have seen the light of day. Fast forward to the United States in 1951, which passed the Inventions Secrecy Act. This law allowed the government to keep certain inventions under wraps if they thought revealing them could threaten national security or disrupt the economy. If an invention was deemed too sensitive, it was hidden away under a secrecy order. The inventor wasn't allowed to talk about it, sell it, or send it overseas, unless it was for military use. Breaking these rules could lead to serious consequences, including jail time. In the 1970s, something remarkable happened with a man named Tom Ogle. While messing around with his lawnmower, he accidentally made a hole in its fuel tank. Instead of fixing it the usual way, he connected a vacuum line from the tank directly to the carburetor inlet. Surprisingly, the lawnmower kept running just fine and didn't use up more fuel. It ran like this for an astounding 96 hours, which got Tom thinking about the possibilities. Tom was incredibly excited when he stumbled upon a surprising discovery. He wondered if this could work on a much larger project, so he decided to experiment with his old car, a 1970 Ford Galaxy. Normally, this car would travel about 11 miles on a single gallon of gas, which isn't very far. However, Tom thought he could improve this. He spent some time adjusting and tweaking his car, hoping to make it use fuel more efficiently. After he finished his modifications, the results were nothing short of miraculous. The car began to achieve an amazing 100 miles for every gallon of gas it consumed. To put this to the test, in April 1977, Tom drove the car for a total of 205 miles and only used up 2 gallons of gas. This was a significant improvement and suggested that Tom's modifications could have a huge impact on how cars are built in the future. Naturally, many people were skeptical of Tom's claims. They thought he might be hiding something, like extra fuel tanks, to make the car go further than it should. They checked his car thoroughly, looking for any sign of trickery or hidden mechanisms that could explain the unexpected fuel efficiency. However, after their inspections, they found absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. Tom's invention turned out to be completely legitimate. It really did make his car incredibly fuel efficient. This discovery had the potential to change the automotive industry by making cars that could go much farther on much less fuel. If cars could be made to use gas as efficiently as Tom's modified Ford Galaxy, it would be a huge step forward in making driving much more economical and environmentally friendly. This invention challenged the status quo of the car industry and the oil economy, potentially reducing the need for so much fuel and disrupting the profits of big oil companies. It suggested a future where cars didn't rely heavily on oil, which could help the environment and reduce costs for everyone. However, the full potential of Tom's discovery was never realized. It was tangled in secrecy and the threat of harsh penalties, reflecting the ongoing struggle between new ideas and existing power structures that control which innovations get to change our world. Tom Ogle was a young mechanic who, at just 24, made an incredible discovery that could change the way cars use fuel. He modified a car carburetor in such a way that it drastically cut down on fuel consumption, potentially saving lots of money and oil. This invention caught the attention of big oil companies and investors who saw Tom's invention as a threat to their profits. As news of Tom's invention spread, powerful figures from the oil industry showed interest, but their intentions were not to help spread his technology. Instead, they planned to buy it and hide it away so it would never be used. Shell Oil offered Tom $25 million, a sum that could make him very rich overnight. However, Tom saw through their plan to bury his invention and refused their money. Determined to see his invention succeed and reach the public, Tom chose to work with investors who promised they would not hide his creation. He took legal steps to protect his invention with patents and gathered a team of lawyers and investors to help him bring his carburetor to the market. Things seemed to be going well, and there was a lot of excitement about the potential of his invention. However, trouble started brewing when the US Air Force showed an interest in his carburetor. Soon after, Tom found himself entangled in a web of legal problems. The Securities and Exchange Commission accused him of breaking investment rules, and the IRS claimed he owed back taxes. His personal life also suffered. His wife left him, taking their daughter with her, as the stress of his public and professional life escalated. Investors began to fight over who controlled Tom's patent, as it promised to be worth billions if it reached the market. Amidst these battles, Tom was shockingly shot by an unknown attacker outside a bar. He survived the shooting, but his troubles were far from over. A few months later, Tom's life took another tragic turn. He died under mysterious circumstances at a friend's apartment, officially declared an accidental overdose involving painkillers and alcohol. However, those close to him believed he was murdered to stop him and his invention from succeeding. Despite their suspicions, the official explanation stood, and Tom's death remained shrouded in mystery. After Tom's death, the fight over his invention faded, and his revolutionary carburetor was forgotten. His story ended as a stark reminder of how difficult it can be for one person with a groundbreaking idea to go against powerful interests. Meanwhile, global politics continued as usual, with deals like the US and Saudi Arabia oil agreement ensuring that oil remained a dominant energy source, undisturbed by innovations like Tom's that might disrupt the status quo. Looking back at history, we often see a struggle between new technology and big businesses that don't want to change. This battle is clear when we look at the story of how the United States decided to use dollars for buying and selling oil across the world, a system known as the petrodollar. This decision made the US government more powerful and made oil companies very rich. It set a pattern for how new ideas in technology would be treated, especially if they threatened these powerful interests. Now let's look at how these struggles impact our world today. Inventions that terrified the status quo. One such story involves Lieutenant Colonel Charles Brown, a former military officer who came up with a clever device that could be attached to a car's air intake system. His invention was quite impressive. It could cut down the car's harmful emissions by 50 to 70% and make the car use less fuel. Brown described his invention as creating a thunderstorm in a bottle, meaning it did more than just help the car burn oxygen. It actually created special molecules that helped the car run cleaner and better. However, despite the obvious environmental benefits of Brown's invention, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, which is supposed to protect the environment, stopped him from bringing his invention to market. His story took a grim turn when he started receiving threats, his lab was broken into, and all his work was stolen. Financially ruined and disheartened, Brown's story echoes those of other inventors like Charles Pogue and Tom Ogle, who also faced mysterious setbacks despite their innovations not directly threatening the oil industry. The experience of these inventors brings up a disturbing question. What happens when someone invents something that could end our need for oil? This scenario was somewhat answered by Stanley Meyer, who invented a car that ran on water. Meyer decided to go public with his invention, unlike others who kept their work hidden. He claimed that his car used a special device that could turn water into hydrogen and oxygen, with the hydrogen used as fuel. This was revolutionary because his device didn't need pure, distilled water. It could use regular tap water. Meyer's invention was so groundbreaking that he said a car could drive across the whole United States using only 22 gallons of water. However, his story also reveals the immense pressures faced by those who challenged the status quo. It's reported that oil-producing countries offered Meyer $1 billion to stop working on his invention, but he turned it down. Like others before him, Meyer's journey was fraught with challenges, including rumors of suppression and threats, showing how difficult it is for significant changes to take place when they threaten powerful interests. Looking at the stories of Brown, Meyer, and others, we see a recurring theme: innovation versus economic power. These stories teach us that bringing a new technology into the world isn't just about making something that works. It's also about dealing with powerful groups that might lose money or influence because of these new inventions. This makes the journey of innovation not just a technical challenge, but also a battle for acceptance in a world where economic interests often outweigh the greater good. Stan's invention was nothing short of a masterpiece, a car that toured the nation and captured everyone's imagination. Experts from various fields examined it closely and unanimously agreed it was a groundbreaking creation. Following their endorsement, a group of scientists visited to see Stan's work for themselves, and they too were convinced, declaring it one of the greatest inventions of the century. This led to a frenzy of media attention and a wave of offers from eager investors, big oil companies, and even high-level interest from the Pentagon. Everyone wanted a piece of this revolutionary technology. However, Stan's rising star was soon to be overshadowed by darker events. In 1998, at a lively restaurant filled with anticipation and excitement, Stan and his brother met with Belgian investors ready to finalize a multi-million-dollar investment. The atmosphere was electric as they toasted to a prosperous future. But moments later, Stan's celebration turned to horror. He suddenly felt terribly sick, his face twisted in pain. He rushed out into the street, overwhelmed by a sudden mysterious illness. As he collapsed, vomiting and in distress, he managed to utter a chilling claim to his brother, "They poisoned me." Despite his dramatic declaration, the official report told a different story. It mentioned nothing of poisoning. Instead, it clinically stated that Stan had died of a brain aneurysm during a lunch with NATO officials, not just investors. This clean, neat explanation seemed all too convenient given the circumstances and Stan's own last words. Questions and doubts began to circulate about the true cause of Stan's untimely death. The term brain aneurysm might sound like a plausible cause, but to those who knew the potential of Stan's invention and the stakes involved, it appeared suspiciously timely. Could a man at the peak of disrupting a multi-billion-dollar industry really just coincidentally succumb to such a condition? Or was his death engineered to look natural, to eliminate a threat to powerful interests? The official documents showed signs of hesitation about the cause of death, with some subtle questioning by the coroner suggesting there might be more to the story. The shift in details about who was at the lunch also raised eyebrows. This inconsistency between the official record and eyewitness accounts led many to believe there was a cover-up. As rumors about Stanley Mears and his water-powered car continued to be whispered and debated, they were tinged not just with admiration for his ingenuity, but also with deep suspicion and conspiracy theories. Instead of being remembered primarily as a brilliant inventor whose work could have changed the world, Stan became a symbol of how threatening innovation can be silenced. His story serves as a stark reminder of the complex interplay between innovation, power, and the lengths to which some might go to maintain the status quo. His final words left a haunting legacy, suggesting a plot woven in secrecy and betrayal, overshadowed by the very brilliance of his invention. Next, we dive into even bigger battles with groundbreaking inventions beyond the laws for limitless energy. In Stan's garage, not only was there a water-powered engine that promised to change the world, but also a strange device shaped like a donut, which was immediately covered up with a national security order. This secrecy adds a layer of mystery and conspiracy to Stan's inventions, almost like something out of a spy movie. Stan had a history of feeling cheated by the patent system, claiming that his ideas had been stolen before. Because of these past experiences, he became very cautious and even paranoid, believing it was necessary to protect his inventions from being taken or hidden away by the government. This is why Stan deliberately altered the voltage and frequency details in his patent. He hoped that by doing so, he could prevent his invention from being stolen again. However, skeptics argue that the engine wouldn't work as claimed, even with the correct numbers. They point to the laws of thermodynamics, which are fundamental principles in physics. According to the second law, energy is always lost when it's transferred or transformed, but Stan's engine claimed to create energy, not just save it. This seems to violate the second law and the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. This leads to a deeper discussion about the nature of these laws. Some people start to question whether these laws are absolute. They wonder if, with the right kind of breakthrough technology, we can bypass these laws. Mainstream scientists usually dismiss such ideas as nonsense, holding firm to the established understanding of physics. But the debate doesn't stop there. It spirals into a broader discussion about whether the traditional laws of physics apply to all situations or if there might be exceptions. The idea that these laws could be overridden is intriguing and controversial, challenging the foundations of physics and how we understand the universe. Amidst these debates, Stan's water-powered car becomes less significant compared to his other invention, the mysterious donut-shaped device. This device, according to some, could harness the vacuum of space itself, a concept that suggests it needed no traditional fuel to operate. This claim overshadows his water car with its bold implications for the future of energy. This story blends elements of secrecy, advanced technology, and the struggle of a lone inventor against larger, institutional forces of science and government. It resonates with those who believe in hidden truths and suppressed technologies. Yet for critics and skeptics, it remains a tale of unproven claims and the blurring lines between revolutionary science and science fiction. As fascinating as these stories are, they leave us wondering where the truth really lies and whether such revolutionary inventions are indeed possible or merely the product of wishful thinking. The idea of empty space used to make us think of a big, quiet nothingness, much like a deserted space out in the cosmos, but quantum physics has completely changed that picture. Now we understand this so-called empty space to be more like the wild, churning water at the bottom of a waterfall than a calm, still lake. This space isn't quiet at all. It's filled with a buzzing energy that's constantly in motion. We used to learn in school that electrons move around the center of an atom just like planets circle the sun, an orderly and predictable dance. However, when scientists looked closer, especially in the emptiness of space where there's nothing to get in the way, they expected everything to behave neatly. But it turns out, things in the quantum world don't follow these neat rules. This was made clear by Willis Lamb, who won a Nobel Prize in 1955 for his discovery, which has come to be known as the Lamb shift. He found out that even in the simplicity of a hydrogen atom, electrons were not just quietly orbiting. Instead, they were being nudged and jostled by the very emptiness around them. What's really going on in this so-called empty space It's teeming with tiny quantum particles that appear and disappear in a blink. They're not just popping in to say hello and vanishing without a trace. Their appearance and disappearance churn out a significant amount of energy. This causes the electrons, those steady foundations of matter, to jump around unpredictably. And here's where it gets even wilder. According to some theories, the amount of energy lurking in a tiny volume of this vacuum, say the size of a coffee cup, is enough to boil away all the water in the world's oceans. That's every single ocean turned into steam by the energy from a small bit of empty space. The potential energy hidden in this vacuum is called zero-point energy, and it's a powerhouse that could potentially outstrip all our current energy sources combined if we could only figure out how to harness it. The idea of tapping into this kind of energy isn't just a modern-day fancy. It's been around since the days of Nikola Tesla, who dreamed of harnessing what he called the ether for limitless energy. Yet, despite all our advancements, this concept remains tantalizingly out of reach. Is this a cosmic joke, or are we just on the cusp of a revolutionary breakthrough? As we continue to explore the quantum realm, it seems to turn our understanding of reality on its head. What we thought was the absolute baseline of nothingness is actually a bubbling pot of energy and potential. Each discovery in this field doesn't just add to our knowledge, it forces us to rethink what we thought we knew. The quantum world is less predictable and mysterious than we imagined. It challenges our deepest understandings of how things work and teases us with thrilling and humbling possibilities. As exciting as these discoveries are, they also remind us of the limits of our knowledge and the vastness of the unknown. Where do we draw the line between what's scientifically possible and what remains in the realm of fantasy? As we peel back layer after layer, the universe seems to be more of a trickster, constantly shifting the goalposts and playing with our attempts to tame the wild frontiers of science. Now let's imagine what's possible when we challenge what we know about science. Finding ether in forbidden experiments. The concept of the ether, or what some might call a hidden layer of existence, suggests that there is an unseen field where all of reality exists, yet it remains out of our sensory reach. Proponents of this idea argue that particles appearing and disappearing from our visible universe are actually moving to and from this unseen dimension. This idea paints the ether as a backstage area for the universe, one that we simply cannot see or directly interact with. The fascination with the ether was notably propelled by Nikola Tesla, who believed that the secrets of the universe could be unlocked by thinking in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Tesla's own experiments, including the Wardenclyffe Tower project on Long Island, aimed to tap into what he thought was an endless well of energy from this invisible field. The tower was designed to be an over-unity device, which theoretically would produce more energy than it took in, defying the traditional laws of physics, specifically the second law of thermodynamics. The scientific mainstream generally dismisses such ideas as more fantasy than reality, arguing against anything that violates the principle of energy conservation, which states that energy cannot simply appear from nowhere or vanish into nothing. Yet those who support the concept of zero-point energy and similar theories insist that they are not creating new energy but merely accessing an existing, albeit hidden, source. One interesting story is that of Howard Johnson and his magnetron motor, which he claimed could use hydrogen magnets, light rays, and fusion to create electricity. From a conventional physics standpoint, Johnson's invention was deemed impossible, yet he managed to demonstrate its functionality repeatedly. Despite these demonstrations, the wider scientific community met his claims with doubt and eventually refused to grant him a patent. This refusal to acknowledge Johnson's work wasn't just about a single patent application, but highlighted a larger issue within the scientific world. Johnson was not just a casual inventor. He posed a real challenge to established scientific norms. His device, which appeared to break the laws of physics, forced a potential reconsideration of what is accepted as true in science. However, instead of investigating further, the scientific establishment chose to maintain traditional beliefs, sidelining Johnson's invention as an oddity rather than a groundbreaking discovery. This situation exemplifies a common conflict in science between groundbreaking ideas and the entrenched beliefs of the scientific community. History has shown that the road to scientific advancement is often littered with skepticism and outright rejection before eventual acceptance. The tales of Tesla, Johnson, and others like them remind us that today's impossibilities might be tomorrow's foundations of science. These stories provoke us to consider how many significant innovations have been overlooked or dismissed because they didn't fit within the existing scientific framework. In the broader scope of scientific inquiry, such dismissals raise important questions about the balance between healthy skepticism and potentially stifling conservatism. Are we dismissing too quickly those ideas that don't fit our current understanding? When does caution hinder progress? Exploring these questions is crucial as we continue to delve into the universe's deepest mysteries. The journey of science is as much about embracing new questions as it is about finding conclusive answers, challenging us to consider what we might discover if we were more open to the possibilities beyond our current knowledge. In a world where government contracts and atomic energy projects are common, there was a man who had already secured over 30 patents in chemistry and physics. His inventions were more than just ideas on paper. They were crucial components of military equipment, showcasing his brilliant mind. However, the rules he was truly challenging were not governmental policies, but the basic principles of physics, specifically the law of conservation of energy, strictly guarded by physicists. These scientists acted like strict overseers, setting the limits on what could be explored in science. They were particularly skeptical of any technology that seemed to defy these established rules. One such invention was Johnson's motor, which promised to retain more than 98% of its efficiency after 20 years, suggesting a break from traditional scientific beliefs. This potential breakthrough was abruptly stopped when thieves broke into Johnson's lab and stole his equipment, sending him a clear message to halt his innovative work. Meanwhile, Thomas Mori was another inventor who ventured into the realm of the zero-point field. Mori created a device that astonishingly generated 50,000 watts of power without any visible energy source. When he tried to patent his invention, he was turned away with the declaration that free energy was impossible. Despite this, the US government showed a hidden interest in his work, which ironically led to serious repercussions for Mori. His situation quickly worsened as his lab was repeatedly targeted and ransacked, and he narrowly escaped multiple assassination attempts, forcing him to take extreme measures for his safety, such as bulletproofing his car and arming himself. In 1940, Mori boldly demonstrated his device, proving it could continuously produce 250,000 volts without any input. However, this display of defiance led to more severe consequences. The very next day, his lab was broken into and he was attacked. Only his decision to carry a pistol saved him. The betrayal by his assistant, who destroyed everything, perhaps under pressure or bribery, left Mori to die in poverty, with his groundbreaking technology buried alongside him. Edwin Gray's experiences were similar to those of Johnson and Mori. Gray invented an electromagnetic motor that seemed to operate endlessly on its own, using only 26.8 watts to generate over 7,000 watts. This remarkable efficiency was confirmed by several scientists. However, when Gray reached out to the government for recognition and support, he was met with silence, which soon turned into hostility. Within a week of his request, his lab was illegally raided and everything he had worked on was seized. Soon after, Gray was found dead at his home under mysterious circumstances, with all his research and records missing. These stories, spread across many years, reveal a pattern of suppression and hostility towards inventors who dared to challenge the accepted norms of science. Each inventor faced severe opposition, not just in the form of skepticism, but through active sabotage and personal danger. Their experiences highlight a troubling resistance to innovation from those in power who preferred maintaining the status quo over exploring revolutionary changes in technology. If these inventors had been supported instead of silenced, we might now be living in a world powered by free and unlimited energy, fundamentally changing our approach to resource use and our impact on the planet. But instead, these pioneers were pushed out, their potentially world-changing technologies squashed by those afraid of the changes they represented. What if these inventors had been celebrated instead of silenced? Could we be living in a radically different world today? Like, comment, and subscribe to explore more thought-provoking questions.